You've been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey guys, Kevin Buck here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, where our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. And our guest for today's show is real estate and multifamily investment expert, Joseph Gozlan. Joseph is a former lieutenant in the Israel Defense Forces and has more than 17 years of leadership experience in the software industry, 12 of which were working for publicly traded companies such as GameStop, Retalix, and JCPenney. Joseph began his real estate investing career back in 2005 when he purchased his first investment property in Israel. Fast forward to early 2015, which is when Joseph began his multifamily journey with the successful acquisition of a 22-unit property located in Celina, Texas. And then in 2017, Joseph led the successful acquisition of a 130-unit two-property portfolio in Lubbock, Texas, and has been serving as the asset manager for all three communities since. Joseph's long-term goal is to reach a critical mass of 3,000 doors under ownership management within the next few years, which it seems he's well on his way of hitting, being that he's got a couple hundred under ownership already today, and he's actually got another one in contract as we actually talk today. He's got a 97 unit that we're going to dig in a little deeper into. We're going to talk about that one and how that one's going. And so what I'd like to do, I'd like to dive deep today into Joseph's business. I want to learn a couple different things. I want to learn out how he's built an $11 million portfolio in such a short period of time. But even more importantly, I want to know what specific action steps that he's going to be taking or that he's currently taking today that will enable him to reach his goal of 3,000 doors, because that's a big goal. It's not impossible by any means at all. In fact, I think it's a very viable goal. But to go from a few hundred units to 3,000, there's lots of moving parts and there's lots of steps that need to be taken. So we're going to dig deeper there because I know a lot of you guys that are listening, you might just have bought your first property. Maybe you're working on that first property, but you've got bigger dreams, you've got bigger ambitions. And so we're going to dig into his systems and processes that will hopefully get him to that $3,000 door goal. Okay, so before we get on to interview with Joseph, I got a few quick updates for you guys I want to run through. First off, you guys are aware. I know. I keep saying this like you don't know already, but if you listen to the show, then you know I invest in mobile home parks, right? That is our business. Joseph is in multifamily, and we are in mobile home parks. And I tell you this only because I know you guys are always out there pounding the pavement. You're looking for opportunities. Maybe it's not necessarily mobile home parks, but whether you're looking for apartment buildings or shopping centers or even single-family homes, you come across other opportunities along the way, okay? And so I want to tell you that we are looking for mobile home parks to purchase. So if you're out there on the hunt and you run across an opportunity that you think might be of interest to us, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about it. We're looking for mobile home parks that are a minimum of 60 spaces in size, and we're open to either paying a very large finder's fee for the right opportunity or even potentially partnering with you and helping raise the capital and taking the deal down together and actually teaming up with you on the deal, okay? So if you have something you'd like to run past me or my team, you can actually just email me directly. My personal email address is kevin@kevinbuck.com, and we've got a lot of access to funding. We've got the wherewithal to take down 60 space deals, but also 600 space deals. Okay. So we've got the ability to do small and large deals. If you come across an opportunity that seems interesting, please reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you about it. Next up, guys, you've heard me mention many times about the investment arm of our company, which is Sunrise Capital Investors. And we own and operate mobile home parks throughout the eastern half of the U.S. And we partner with accredited investors like yourself who are seeking passive investments with long-term strong returns, okay? And I mention this only because we recently closed out our very first successful Reg D 506C fund offering, and we've had to turn away a lot of people over the last couple of months, unfortunately. But there's good news, right? There's always a silver lining to the dark cloud, and that is that we are in planning mode for releasing fund number 2. So this will be Mobile Home Park Fund number 2. And so if you missed out on that first fund, you have an interest in working with us in the future, what you need to do is go to our website, sunrisecapitalinvestors.com, and create a free account inside our investment portal. This will really just place you on the first to know list for when our second fund rolls out. So I'm guessing that based on the demand for that first one, that this second fund will probably subscribe up pretty quickly. We'll hit our subscription limit pretty quickly. And so be sure to go to our website. It's pretty quick, a couple minutes. You can have an account there, and then you'll be on the first to know basis. You'll get all of our upcoming emails as we start prepping to release fund number 2. Okay, guys. And then lastly, if you happen to be in the Tampa Bay area, I'd love to meet you in person. I love meeting others that share the same passion for real estate investing that I do. So if you find yourself in Tampa Bay and you've got some extra time, let me know before you come in, and we can try to coordinate our schedules. Again, personal email address is kevin@kevinbupp.com. Shoot me an email. Let me know when you're coming, and let's see if we can find some time to get together. Okay, coffee, beer, lunch, dinner, whatever works. Okay, again, kevin@kevinbupp.com. Now, guys, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Joseph Goslin to the show. Joseph, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing fantastic, Kevin. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, man. And I'm looking forward to really digging into your business and learning more about you, Joseph. I know we had a few minutes to chat before we started recording here today, but we literally just scratched the surface, barely even scratched the surface. So I want to learn more about you and your real estate endeavors. But before we dive into that, you've actually had a life and a career before getting into real estate. So let's back up a few years and take a few minutes to tell our listeners about your background prior to real estate. And then once we kind of go through your background and your bio a little bit, I'd like to talk about your transition into real estate. So go ahead and take a few minutes, Joseph, and tell us a little bit more about yourself, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up like a lot of our generation, the Gen X guys, with parents that were telling us, go to school, get good, great grades, go to the college, get an engineering degree or a medical degree or a law degree or whatever degree, and then find a job and wait for pension. And that's what I went through the course, right? So I went to the university after the military, because everybody in Israel go to the military service, and I got my engineering degree in software, and then I got into my career. And over the last 17 years, I've been in the software industry for various roles and positions, and mostly leadership. But that was my career growth. That was my path that I was set as a young person. And somewhere around 2005, I started, like many of your other listeners did, with Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that kind of opens your eyes and you start thinking. And again, like a lot of the other real estate investors, I became an accidental landlord when my wife, at the time we had no kids, we bought a property and it was just too big for us. And we were renting like a one-bedroom apartment, and the other condo that we bought was way too big for us. So we said, okay, let's just lease it out for a couple of years until we have a kid or something and we're ready for the big condo. And that's really how we started our real estate investment career. It's just accidental landlords.
Well, I guess you could say a little bit accidental, but I mean, you started educating yourself. You said you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that's what kind of led you guys to even thinking of turning that into a rental, correct? I mean, because maybe if you hadn't read that book, you'd have just turned around and sold that condo that was a little too large and bought something else later on down the road once you were ready for it, once you had children or something. So it sounds like you were, subconsciously already looking to become a landlord. I don't know if it was an accident. I don't think anything's ever an accident, right? So you were already, you were planting the seeds in your brain by reading the right material about why real estate needs to be a part of your business and or a part of your investment strategy moving forward. And so I want to talk a little bit about the transition period, because I think it's very important for people to understand. You had a career. You're in the software industry, and so I mean, you had a legitimate 9-to-5, or maybe it was longer than a 9-to-5, but you had a legitimate career, very successful career. You became an accidental landlord with that condo, but there was a pretty big gap of time from the period when you started renting out that condo to when you actually dove in and really seriously started buying larger properties or started building that portfolio. And so I want to know, what was the trigger moment? Like, when did you finally say, all right, enough's enough? Like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do it in a big way, and here's why. I mean, what was the big why that really pushed you over that threshold to start investing and buying bigger properties?
Yeah, so I'll just give a little bit of a lead, and then I'll talk about the big why for me. But in 2007, we got relocated to the United States through work, and my wife and I just came in, and it was the big crash, and we're looking around, and we were lucky enough, and I don't know if it's luck, but we were able to recognize that this was probably the best time to invest in real estate that we'll ever see in our lives, pretty much. And so that's where we started investing in more real estate. But just like everybody else, we didn't know what multifamily is. We went to singles, and that's where we invested. But a few years later, in 2010, my second child was born. And about a week after he was born, we had to go back to the hospital. He had some kind of an infection, and we spent the next 3 weeks in the hospital. And that is a children's hospital. And the staff over there is just nothing short of angels, right? They do so much for the kids, and they're so professional. And that built the why for me. So my goal, the reason I'm driving towards that many units and that large net worth is I have a dream to write one of those big cardboard checks with $1 million for Children's Hospital here in Celina, Texas.
I love it.
And
I love it.
That's my why. That's my driver. And honestly, that's my midway goal. My ultimate goal would be to build one of those, but we'll get there someday.
Sure. One step at a time. Yeah. Well, writing $1 million check as a donation to the hospital, I think that's a good first step. That's an awesome first step. So it sounds like you were investing then when you and your wife moved to Texas from Israel. You guys started investing in single family. So you said back in 2007, you kind of saw the opportunity. You saw that there was blood in the streets, basically, and that there was an incredible opportunity to buy distressed real estate at all-time low prices. And so from 2007 till you bought your first multifamily in 2015, were you buying single-family homes? Was that part of your business during that period of time?
So that was more of a hobby and investment strategy. Right? We didn't really focus on it.
Okay.
But the main trigger that caused me to really switch over from single to multifamily and really put me on the path of switching careers was somewhere in 2015. I had to write about $45,000 checks to fix stuff. We had a foundation issue, and we had plumbing issue, and we had a hailstorm, and we had a water heater burst, and we just had a very unlucky 4 months.
Yeah.
And I say unlucky, but this is life, right? Anyone that invests in real estate recognize that this is it's life. It happens, right? Even as we speak, I have a property that needs a new AC. It's just life, right? So, but when I had to write $45,000 worth of checks in a 4 month period, I realized that it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep doing that because if all my property needed that kind of an investment, I would be in trouble. So I started researching what's out there, what's better, what's bigger, what's scalable, and what is safer. And for me, multifamily kind of landed the best opportunity for all kind of reasons.
Okay. Well, sounds good. And so I want to talk about, after you identified multifamily as being the asset type you wanted to place your focus into, what did you do to get educated? Because going from single-family rentals, having a few single-family rentals, to buying a 22 unit or a 97 unit or a 130 unit property, it's a big step. It's a big change. It's a completely different process. Everything from the initial stages of writing a letter of intent to doing the due diligence to even doing the financing side to raising private equity to take a larger deal down like that. And so I want to talk to you about the educational side. What did you do to get educated on multifamily before diving into that very first multifamily property?
Yeah, so for me, I'm a little bit of a control freak. I'm very analytical. Mm-hmm. So it required a lot of legwork, right? So I read a lot of books. I listened to a ton of podcasts, yours included, because back in the time, you focused a little bit more on multifamily. Mm-hmm. And some other podcasts that are very popular. I listened to audiobooks. I read books, of course. I went online to the big communities like Bigger Pocket and try to get as much knowledge as I can. And then the first step I took is start analyzing deals, right? So I signed up for the big commercial real estate agencies out there that send blasts to pretty much everybody whenever they have a property on the market. And I would download all of those property packages and I would start to underwrite them. And through that process, I have built our underwriting model and really toned it down. So today we already have an 11-tab wide Excel file that we use to underwrite a deal. But back then I started with a very small one. And every time that I saw another thing or another number or another formula in the packages, I would go research what that means, how it works.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I'm sorry for interrupting the show, but I have something super important I wanted to share with you. I've been invited back for a second consecutive year as a presenter and panel moderator at the Best Ever Conference in Denver, hosted by Joe Fairless. Last year was an absolute blast, and the talent both on stage and in the room was nothing short of amazing, and this year, that talent has been stepped up a notch. Being that you're a listener to my show, I'd like to extend an invite for you to come and join me this year. The event is February 9th and 10th in downtown Denver, and seats are very limited. Use offer code KEVIN, my name, KEVIN, to receive 10% discount off the price of admission. The early bird registration is limited, and I guarantee that this event will sell out, so grab your tickets while you can. To learn more and to register, go to besteverconference.com. Now, I'm positive that once you take a look at the speaker lineup that your mind will be made up and you'll be attending. And just to sweeten that pot a little bit, I'm going to be hosting a free real estate and mobile home park investing mastermind on Friday evening, free of charge for all who want to join. I did the same thing last year, and it was a huge hit, and I'd welcome the opportunity to meet with you and spend some time together to help you reach your real estate goals. If you want to partake in this mastermind session, you'll need to send me an email to kevin@kevinbupp.com and include proof of registration as well as your contact information. That way I will put you on the mastermind list. Again, go to besteverconference.com, use offer code KEVIN to receive a 10% discount off the price of admission, and I'll look forward to meeting you in February. Now back to the show.
And I would put it into my Excel with my comfort level for risk versus rewards. And at the same time, I started building my team because I know real estate is a team sport. You can't do it by yourself. So one of the first steps is find your property management, and I interviewed quite a few of them. And once I picked the one that I wanted, they were also a crucial part of my education process.
Okay, fantastic. So I want to talk to you about that underwriting. You started receiving packages from brokers, these marketing packages. Joseph, I mean, a lot of these brokers spend a lot of time putting these packages together. They run out pro formas on these packages over the 5-10 year span. Isn't that enough underwriting? I mean, to determine whether or not a deal is good or not? Why'd you have to underwrite it yourself? I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, you just tee it up. Yeah. So here's the thing: whatever you do in life, whatever somebody offers you, you need to understand what is their business model and what is their goal versus your goal.
Sure.
Sometimes there is alignment, sometimes there is not. Every time you get a package from a broker, their interest is aligned with the seller. They represent the seller. Their job is to make the sale at the highest possible amount. So if they have to assume that everything is going to be rainbows and lollipops in the future, that's the assumptions they're going to make, and that's the numbers they're going to put. So if somebody accidentally rented an apartment at the top dollar in the market, then that's going to be the same rent for every unit in the property.
Sure.
So there's a lot of rosy assumptions in every broker's pro forma, just because, again, their job is to get the seller the highest amount of proceeds out of the property.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, and this isn't to bash brokers, but I want to ask you an honest question regarding working with brokers, because it sounds like you probably work with a lot more brokers than we do, and I've got a lot of friends that are brokers. We bought properties through brokers, so this is not a bash brokers question, but have you found that the brokers that are out there that actually have owned and operated multifamily properties, that have actively participated from an investor side in multifamily properties, seem to have a more realistic vision when they put together these marketing packages than the ones that do not own property, that are just strictly transactional brokers?
Honestly, no. So let's start with, I'm not bashing brokers because I am one myself.
Yeah.
Right, I'm licensed in Texas, and we do have a branch of our business that does that. What I've learned is the brokers that have been around longer, that have been through the 2007-8 crash or even the previous ones, usually have a more realistic view of things.
Okay.
Now, some brokers that belong to the big, really big companies out there, and I'm not going to name them, but everybody knows who they are, right? They get every property through the same marketing machine that they have, right? So all these things are not being even set by the broker itself. It's set by the machine of the organization, and they all have their own assumptions built in. And this is what something I would probably caution everybody to look at is when you start your underwriting process and understanding the formulas, you can use industry-wide averages to do a quick analysis, but when you gear up to actually put an offer on a property, really understand the property situation. And the best example I have is contracted services, usually that have landscape in it. Well, I have seen a property that is 200 units on 2 acres of concrete, right, with a very low landscape cost. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a 200-unit property that sits on 20 acres of landscape, and they had a full-time person dedicated just for landscape.
Sure.
So, yes, these two will average out in an industry average, but when you look at the property and underwrite it, you really have to focus on the property itself and what the cost and the expenses are going to be in that property.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. That's actually a good example that you gave there as well regarding landscaping, because I mean there can be a very large discrepancy between those two as far as the cost on an annual basis to maintain that one that literally has a 0 lot line and has very little grass to the one that sits on 16 or 20 acres of property and they've got a full-time guy mowing the grass and maintaining the grounds. I mean, a significant difference there. And so taking those industry averages, your underwriting gets very skewed if you don't understand your market, understand the property individually on its own, and what little uniqueness it has to itself, like the 0 lot line versus 16 acres of green, right? So that's a great example that you gave there, Joseph. I want to talk to you about
and a lot of those.
Yeah. Go ahead.
A lot of those pro formas are using industry averages because you also have to, when you look at underwriting and you get the seller's numbers, the seller's P&L, you got to understand that that's the seller's number. If the pest control guy is his brother-in-law, he's going to get a discount that you're not going to get, right? And if he really, really likes an employee and he's paying them more because they've been together for 15 years, it does not mean that will be your payroll cost.
Right.
Yours will be lower.
And so it can work. It can work in your favor or work against you. Like in that scenario you just gave, to where maybe the seller's numbers, maybe he's paying a manager or a maintenance guy $60,000 a year, whereas that the industry standard should be like $38,000, right? And so that could work to your favor because you can underwrite it and make your offer based on his inflated number, and that you can shave that number down post closing and actually save on expenses, thus raising your NOI. So it can definitely work both ways. Would you agree?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is why it's important to know your own numbers.
That's it. It's funny. It's more in our industry. So you and I it's similar. We're both in multifamily, but I'd say the one major difference probably is that there's a lot more mom and pops that we're working with as far as mobile home parks are concerned, and the owner operators that own these things today. And I'd say it runs rampant in our business. So we pretty much have to reconstruct every single line item on when we're underwriting a property, because for the most part, we just bought a property recently up in Buffalo where gorgeous property. I mean, it's an institutional grade property, but it was owned by a mom and pop. And they literally owned the snowplow. They owned all the lawn care equipment. They owned everything. And that guy that ran that park for the last 30 years, the owner, was in there on a daily, weekly basis doing all that. And so it showed up nowhere on the financials, right? Because it was his time. It was his own time. He wasn't paying other people to do the work. And so, the expense ratio when that was presented to us was about 12% lower than what was realistic on that property. And so if you don't know the property, if you don't know the market, if you don't know the property and all the specifics that go along with it, you can't factor those line items in, you could drastically overpay for something. I mean, one example on that property is the snow plowing. So this actually is more specific to a market. So we own a lot of parks that are not in climates that would get a lot of snow accumulation. Buffalo, we all know that Buffalo, even if you don't know much about Buffalo, you know that they get a heck of a lot of snow every year, and it's cold there. And they get a lot more snow than any of our other communities. I mean, probably about 10 times the amount of snow than our other communities. And that's a big deal when you're doing your underwriting, when you're actually modeling this thing out, because a snow contract is something we've never had to actually go out and bid before. And so we had to spend a lot of time making sure that we were getting accurate numbers on what it was going to cost us for snow removal on an annual basis. And it's a big number. I mean, it's a big enough number to where if someone undershot it, or they just assumed they were going to do it themselves because when we bought this park, it came with a snow plow. Well, I'm just going to do it myself, or I'm going to have my manager do it. Well, that's great. But what if your manager gets tired of doing it? Or what if the truck breaks down, you decide you don't want to fix it anymore, and you're going to have to outsource this, and you're going to have to spend $20,000 a year to outsource it? You need to factor that in whether you plan to do it or not. That needs to be factored in there. That needs to be underwritten into that deal, because even if you're going to do it yourself, the next buyer that comes along is going to put that into their underwriting. And that's going to skew the numbers in a big way. So just very important little details that I think you need to take into consideration when looking at any type of investment property. And just make sure you know the numbers, make sure you know the property, you know the market very, very intimately is the best way to put it. So,
yeah, absolutely right.
Joseph.
And this is why I said earlier, building a team, your property management is going to help you with that.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I want to talk to you a little bit about your overall investment strategy, and I want to start with really what underlying fundamentals that you look for when you're evaluating a deal, like, a certain size. Like, do you guys have a minimum size of units that you're looking for nowadays? A certain class of property, like C class, C plus class, B class. Are you looking for things that have a minimum of occupancy, like, 87% occupied or higher? Or are you looking for the big value add plays that might still be majorly distressed and literally only be 60% occupied? Like, give me a general idea of like what not your perfect deal, but the ideal opportunity today looks like for your group. Yeah,
so very simplistically saying, we're looking for B and C class property in secondary markets.
Okay.
Now, driving that a little bit lower to what we're focusing on, secondary market can be a win or a risk, right? So we're looking at the secondary market, and we evaluate really the strength of that market. And the factors that we're looking at, the most important for us is economics, right? What drives the economics in the city? Where do the jobs come from? How stable the job market is? What's the unemployment rate? Because when you are in the B and C class range, then you're looking for blue-collar, hardworking families, and these families need jobs in order to pay the rent, right? So that's really where most of our focus goes to when we look at a new market is, where's the money? Where are the jobs? Where is it coming from? Is it a one employer town? Is it oil and gas, how volatile the industry that this town is built around? That's the main drivers for us.
Okay. And then how about size? Any particular minimum size that you guys that's kind of your threshold? Like, hey, we're only looking at 40 units plus or 40 doors plus, or will you consider just about anything?
So yes and no. It's a little bit complicated. So if it's a new market, we're looking for 100, 150 units plus. If it's a market that we already have a substantial presence, then we'll go down to 20 and 30 as long as the price is right. Because I already have an infrastructure in town. I already have management and maintenance people and all that. So I might consider a smaller property, but the numbers will have to justify the fact that I'm going to have someone drive over to that property.
Sure.
And so on.
Okay. Well, how many markets at one time do you focus in?
So we are in 2 markets right now, and we are attempting to get into 3 others as we talk.
Okay. What do you think is, like, for someone that's just getting started out and they haven't bought their first apartment, yet to date? How many markets should they identify? I mean, you don't want to overwhelm yourself, right? I mean, you could start looking at, you could say, I'm the opportunistic investor and I'll buy anywhere on the eastern half of the United States. Well, that's overwhelming. That's not specific enough. And so if you really want to get a micro level understanding of these individual markets, it takes time. And so what would the suggestion you give to a new investor? Like how many should they focus on? Is it 2 markets initially, 3 markets, 5 markets? Like what's too much?
So if I'm a new investor and this is an industry that kind of makes it a little bit hard to get started, but once you get started, it's a lot easier. But then I would focus on 1 or 2 markets, mostly because you have to start building the relationship with the brokers, with the lenders, with the property management, and so on. And if you try to go too wide, you'll go 5 markets, you'll just spread yourself so thin on the administrative side that you won't be able to focus on finding your next opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, no, that's great advice. And what is your long-term strategy with these properties? I mean, I know that you have a goal of donating $1 million to the Children's Hospital there in Texas, and hopefully a future goal of even building a hospital yourself for children. But as far as your hold time and your long-term goals with each one of these acquisitions, when you're going into them, are you thinking kind of like a 10-year horizon with each one of these deals, or longer or shorter?
So we try to evaluate each property, each project on its own. Mm-hmm. We always believe in long-term holds, but that's not necessarily aligning with our investors. So we listen to our investors. The previous syndication we did was 10-year hold period. We learned from our investors that they're looking for a shorter period. So the one that we have under contract is targeted for 5 to 7 years. But whatever we targeted, we also tell our investors that part of our jobs as the group leaders, as the investment leaders, is to keep a constant monitoring on macro and micro economics of the market, right? Are we on a downturn? Are we on an upswing? Did we hit bottom? Are we still in recovery? And then when we get towards the year of a sale, then we're going to have a conversation with our investors and say, hey, look, we said we'll sell in 7, but we're in year 5 and it's the best time to sell, so let's sell now. Mm-hmm. Or we're hitting year 6 and we said 7, but we're still not fully recovered, so let's wait a couple more years.
Yep.
So that's really where it has to be dynamic, it has to be intentional, and it should not be fixed and no flexibility there.
Yep, no, I agree with you. And so that brings up my next question. And so for this next opportunity, you said that you've given them, you kind of mentioned to them a 5 to 7 year horizon. Obviously, we know that there's flexibility there, right? It's not just a static 5 or 7 years. That changes the debt structure more than likely, because I'm assuming on maybe a few of these deals that you've already acquired, you probably have some type of CMBS or Fannie debt in place, which is long-term fixed, a 10-year term type debt. Am I correct with that assessment as far as the type of debt you've got currently in place today?
Yes.
Okay. So how will that change? Will you still put the same kind of debt on this 97 unit property that you're closing here in the next couple of weeks, or will that be a different structure?
No, we're actually targeting a longer fixed debt. So we talked to Fannie and we asked for a 12-year term. And the reason we asked for that is if we're going to sell in 5 or 7 years, a 12-year term will still allow the buyer to assume the loan with more than 5 years left on it.
Got it.
And probably get a supplemental in there so they can leverage it up. The other reason is that our projections is that in the next few years we're going to have a turn, right? I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you if it's going to be in a year or in 3 or in 5. But what we do know is that the Federal Reserve still intends on increasing interest rates. Mm-hmm. So by locking it now for 12 years, our assumption will be a lot more attractive in 5 to 7 years than what will be on the market there if everything goes in the same way it's going right now.
Yep. No, that's absolutely right. And so just for those that don't know, what is a supplemental loan? What is a Fannie supplemental loan? Just for those that aren't familiar with that.
Yeah, so the best way to describe it is like a second lien on your home, right? A home line of equity line.
A HELOC.
Same thing. We go back to the lender. We go back to the lender and say, look, when we bought it, it was worth X. Now it's worth X plus $2 million. We want to add another line of debt to the property. and we take a little bit more funds into it. Or when you come to buy a property that already has a loan that you're going to assume, you can talk to the lender and prove it that it's worth more than it was when it was started. And that's why you're buying it at a higher price, and the lender will basically let you assume the loan and increase the amount at the same time.
Yep. Okay. Sounds good. So basically allows you to tap into equity. If you're currently holding the property, it allows you to tap into equity as a HELOC would without having to redo the terms of the first lien that's in place. Because those types of loans, the Fannie loans, have a very expensive prepay, also known as defeasance. I mean, it's incredibly expensive. And in addition to that is, 3 years down the road, if you guys want to put a supplemental on there and rates are higher, the last thing you want to do is refinance and actually put a higher interest rate on the property. You want to keep the low rate locked in that you got 3 years prior. And so the supplemental comes into play at that point in time. I think that's important to clarify, because I think that's going to be probably a very attractive part of your strategy if you guys do decide to exit out, in 5 to 6 years for that next buyer in line, as far as how much equity is in the property and can they actually tie in a supplemental to help make the deal more attractive as far as the total amount of equity needed to get into the deal or to assume the deal. So, no, I think that. I'm glad we covered that there. So I want to talk about this 97 unit property, Joseph, that you guys are in contract with. And more specifically, what I want to discuss with you, since this is a fresh one, I mean, this is like in the pipeline today. This is closing in a few weeks. I want to talk about more so the due diligence process. And this is going to be more geared towards those that have not they've not purchased their first multifamily property yet. They haven't gone through a very detailed due diligence inspection phase on a commercial or multifamily property. And so it's different. And we've got a lot of listeners that invest in single family homes. Doing due diligence on a 2,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath home is drastically different than on a 97 unit apartment complex. And so I guess first and foremost, give us just some very basic high-level details of this 97-unit property, like the year built, what type of roof structure does it have? Is it concrete block construction? Just some very basics on it. And then talk to us about what the due diligence process looked for you guys, start to finish. I mean, you can give us a condensed version. We don't have to go through each line item in great detail, but just I want to kind of look at it through your eyes. If you were talking over the phone and you were trying to guide someone through their first inspection period on a multifamily property, and you only had a couple of minutes to kind of just give them the bullet points of what that process looks like, that's how I want you to cover it, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So it's a C-class property, 1970s, early 70s built, brick over wood frame, pitched roof shingles, right? So that's the profile of the building that we're buying. And it's multiple buildings. What we're looking for when we do inspections, and I know I sound like a broken record here, but you got to build your team before you get something under contract. Mm-hmm. So our property management is our partner when we go into due diligence, and we walk every single unit. We take a ton of pictures. We bring in some third-party contractors to take a look at the pest control situation. We bring in plumbers that have the cameras that go through the sewer line, and we check every sewer line under every building. We also have exterior contractors come in and inspect the parking lots and the roofs and the boilers and whatever other big mechanical items that are on the exterior of the property. And when we get teams that walk every unit, and sometimes you got to bring in 3 and 4 teams because 100, 150 units is a lot of units to walk. And what we do is I give them cameras. I bought 3 or 4 sets of cameras already with extra batteries and extra memory cards. And they also have a form that we created that grades every component that we've listed from 1 to 4. And 1 is in great condition, 2 is working condition, 3 is probably going to have to be fixed sometime soon, and 4 means have to be fixed today. And when we're done with all this, then we collect all these forms. I have my VA type it all into an Excel file, and we aggregate. So when we're done with the due diligence walkthrough, I can tell you to the level of the light switch how many of those I'm going to have to replace. I can tell you how many appliances I have, of which color, of which kind, and what's their condition. And that really gives us a good view of what are we going into, how much capital we're going to have to spend day one, and how much work we're going to have to do on each and every unit in order to turn it around to where we're targeting them to be.
Got it. And how long does this process take? I mean, just the walkthrough alone can take a long time, but give me an idea of that, of creating that initial budget of capital improvements. How long does that process take?
So the walkthroughs, we usually can knock off 100 units within a day and a half.
Okay.
That's our pace pretty much. And that's just a walkthrough, right? After that, you need to start collecting all of the different bids from the third-party contractors. You got to aggregate the Excel, put in the forms, and aggregate the results. And then at the end of the day, you have to compile everything to one big picture of this is the property report.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes about a week or so until we get everything in and we compile it together. So end to end, it's about a week and a half for us to know exactly what we're getting into.
Got it. Have there been any properties between when you bought your first multifamily to today that you've actually got into contract and then you've actually backed out during the due diligence or inspection period because you've found something unsavory about that property?
Yeah, 2 of them actually.
Do you mind sharing just a brief detail of what popped up or what unexpected came to light that made you essentially back out of the deal?
Yeah, so 2 different reasons, right? The first one we had on contract was a small one, about 30 units, $1.2 million kind of deal, but there was about $400,000 worth of deferred maintenance. They had shot-out roofs, they had serious sewer problems underneath the building, and some other things that kind of were risk. We're talking balconies that are about to collapse.
Wow.
Not just cosmetics, right? So for us to go into this, we either spend the $400,000 that's going to have to bring this property to a dignified, safe environment to live in, or we're going to be slumlords. And we are refusing absolutely categorically to be slumlords.
Yeah, I think that's a good decision.
And we tried to negotiate that with the seller to say, hey, look, we couldn't see the roofs when we did the tour. We couldn't see the sewers underneath the building. The rotted wood and broken concrete on the patios was not very clear from just a normal property tour. These are things that we didn't know before, right? I'm not going to knock them off on cosmetics. But the seller wouldn't negotiate with us. So for me, everything is math over emotions. Yep. So we walked away. And the second property, we walked in after a very long negotiation process, thousands of dollars in legal fees stacked up. And we realized when we started doing the lease audit that about half of the property works for the same employer. So we did some research. We did some research and we realized that it's a roaming contractor that brings his employees with him wherever he goes. So all those employees had air beds, air mattresses, air sofas, right? No real furniture. So for us, it's a risk that half of your property is going to disappear in a few months when the contract is up. So, but that by itself is not enough to scare us, right? What we did is we said, okay, in case that contractor moves on, does the town economy going to support leasing this thing back up? Because if that's the case, it's just a little risk and we can mitigate the risk. But we talked to the locals. We went to City Hall and pulled up project. We looked at the other employees in the area, and we realized that that town is going nowhere in terms of economy, and that we're never going to lease this thing up once it's vacated by the contractor. So we just walked away. But it was not a price thing. When we talked to the broker and we told him we're walking away, he said, well, is there a different price point? Well, no. There's nothing we can do to wake this town's economy.
Sure.
So we're walking away.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a risk. I mean, yes, if it's a robust enough of an economy where you feel like you could basically lease that back up at a pretty aggressive rate, if you should lose half of that tenant base, that's one thing. But just in general, that would make me lose sleep at night knowing that those residents literally are sleeping on air mattresses with no real furniture, because it doesn't even take a moving truck for them to get up and move. All they got to do is deflate their mattress and they're off and gone. So very minimal efforts for them to actually pack up and go. That would concern me a bit as well. And so I want to change gears a little bit, Joseph. We're running out of time here, so I want to be respectful of your time. There's really just a couple questions left that I have for you. I mean, we could talk for many hours, I'm sure, but I want to, again, be respectful of your time. And so I want to talk about the first one I have is challenges, is some of the biggest challenges that you faced taking down your first multifamily property, and what you learned from that challenge, and what advice you would give anyone that's listening and that's maybe at that same spot in life where they're looking to take down their first deal. So like, what was that one big, hurdle for you to push through, and how'd you push through it?
Well, the biggest hurdle in getting into multifamily is getting your foot through the door. Lot of those.
What's that mean? You mean just with a broker, like getting your foot through the door and actually getting a relationship with a broker?
Just finding a deal, finding a property that you can afford, that is a good deal, right? Because I'm a broker, I can give your listeners a little bit of peek behind the curtains, right? The good brokers out there make 2, 3, 4 transactions a year. Now, don't feel sorry for them. Each one of them makes 6-figure commissions on these deals, right? So when you do 2, 3 transactions a year, then you're going to talk to every possible buyer, and you're only going to present the buyers that have the highest and greatest chance of closing the deal. Mm-hmm. So if the choice is between somebody that has never done this or somebody that is already having 500 units behind him, even if it's a lower price, you would still turn around to the seller and say, look, this guy might be offering less, but he's more likely to close the deal. Mm-hmm. So it's a probability game.
Sure.
So as a new guy, it's really hard to get through because the brokers don't know you. You don't have any history of closing. So it's kind of like a catch-22. You can't start without doing something, but you can't do something without starting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the biggest hurdle I've experienced and that I've seen other new investors experience.
But how do you get over that, though? That's the big thing. How do you get through that? How with a new guy? Is it just being persistent and staying at top of mind of these different brokers until they give you a shot? Is that really what it comes down to?
So that's one of the rare cases where brute force and perseverance is not going to help you. This is where you have to start building relationship with those brokers. They need to know you as a person. They need to know you as an investor. They need to know that when you say, I want to buy this, that you will pull the trigger and you are not going to panic halfway through. And it helps a lot if you get a commercial mortgage broker to kind of underwrite you and say, yes, John Smith is qualified for, $1 million loan. It helps them. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing to do. The other way to do it is just go source it yourself. Find a list, send postcards, send yellow letters, make cold calling, do whatever it takes. And by the way, this is how we got our first one, is we just couldn't get anywhere near with the brokers. Then we just went out and sourced it ourselves. Okay.
That's very interesting. That was going to be my next question, is how do you guys, primarily, how do you find your deals? Is it just through brokers, or do you do any out-of-the-box guerrilla marketing, direct mail, cold calling, things of that nature? And it sounds like you do. I don't know if you still do. Have you gone the way of doing any kind of out-of-the-box marketing and just rely on brokers today, or do you still actually incorporate that into your business?
So we actually do all at the same time, right? So we do direct marketing ourselves. We have really good relationships with brokers, and our property management is also a good source. to get deals as well. So we're trying to build relationship with anyone that we can in this industry, because it really is a relationship-based industry.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really good to know, because I've had many multifamily guys on the show, Joseph, and I can tell you that you're like one of the few that actually incorporates any kind of direct mail or I call it guerrilla marketing tactics, but really it's just basically out of the box marketing tactics that don't really hinge on just relying on a broker to bring you opportunities. And so can you speak just real quick, and I know we're out of time technically, but just real quickly, what kind of response rates do you typically get? Do you see that you'll continue doing these direct mail and cold calling efforts because there's actually you're getting results from it? I mean, do you think you'll continue with this?
Yes, we're going to continue. That's the simple answer. But there's two things to know about direct marketing, especially in multifamily. Your response rate goes down the larger the property you're targeting.
Yep.
So the chances that you'll be able to identify and reach the decision maker on a 400-unit apartment community are slim compared to identifying the owner and sending that postcard to the right person that owns 30 units. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing to know about direct marketing in this industry. The other thing about direct marketing, and that's true regardless of what kind of direct marketing you do, is direct marketing doesn't generate an opportunity. It only puts you in front of the person when that opportunity happens to them. So persistency and consistency is important with direct marketing. Sending 10,000 postcards once is not going to be as efficient as sending, 500 units every week for a year. Mm-hmm. So that's really where you got to know what the tool is and what it's capable of and set your expectation accordingly. You can send 500 postcards and get no response, and you can send 500 postcards and get 10 phone calls.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. I mean, consistency is the key. I mean, it's all about getting your message in front of that potential seller when the timing is right for them, right? Either when they either want or need to sell. I mean, because you could send them 100 postcards over the period of 3 years, and the timing was wrong. But that 101st postcard, you got it in front of them when either maybe they start thinking about the term that's coming due in their existing loan that's in place, or maybe they're, the partnership is splitting up, or maybe they're just tired. They're kind of like, I'm going to make a change. I want to go sell this in 1031 into a triple net CVS property, right? And I don't want to think about this apartment complex any longer. So, but it's all about getting that timing right. And we love direct mail. We love cold calling. We love all those efforts. We love brokers. We love it all. But we do it all. We definitely put a lot of effort into each single batch of direct mail, each single batch of cold calling, and also put a lot of effort into maintaining relationships with brokers, because again, it's just all about getting yourself in the mix or intertwined with either an owner when they either want or need to sell, or with a broker when that owner actually brings them an opportunity, right? And a fresh opportunity. You want to be there. You want to be the guy that's top of mind. Well, Joseph, we're pretty much out of time here, and I really appreciate you taking the time to get on the call here. I've learned a lot about your business. You shared a lot of great tips and strategies, and you guys you're kicking butt, man. I mean, it sounds like you guys have a great plan in place to get you from where you're at today to get to that 3,000 units. And I'll look forward to the day that I can bring you back on the show when you guys start reaching that goal. When you get close to reaching that goal, I'd love to bring you back on and actually do a recap and actually take a look back at the path that you took over that period of time it took you to get to that 3,000 or close to that 3,000. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of newer insights. Would have had some additional challenges along the way we can discuss. And so I'll look forward to that day, my friend. But it sounds like you are on the right path, and you're an inspiration to all of us. So, if there's, I guess one last thing I want to share, if there's one last final golden nugget of advice or wisdom that you could leave with our listeners. You've given us a lot already, but if there's just one last golden nugget that you could leave with our listeners that might inspire and motivate them as they progress in their real estate investing career, what would that one last thing be that you would tell everyone?
I'm a big believer in karma. We operate, we do everything we do in the business as karma, right? So when you buy a multifamily property, treat your residents with respect, build a sense of community, give them, and you will get 10 times more. Mm-hmm. So that's the best advice I can give. These are hardworking families. They need a safe and good place to live. Don't be a slumlord. Build communities.
No, that's awesome. I love it, Joseph. Well, guys, if you want to learn more about Joseph and his company, you can go visit his website. It's ebgacquisitions.com. And that's E as in Edward, B as in boy, G as in what? G as in girl, I guess. ebgacquisitions.com. Joseph, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming to the show, my friend. You have a great week, and we'll talk again soon.
It's been an honor. Thank you.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com. And we'll see you next Monday morning.